Ace Bailey entered the year as one of the most anticipated members of this draft class and a potential #1 pick candidate, and so far he's shown a lot of his immense upside as a 6'9" shot maker on the wing and turned in some impressive performances, but many of the concerns he had entering the year have been highlighted in a way that make him one of the more interesting players to project in the last several classes. So let's get into who Ace is, what he's been great at, what he needs to work on, and some historical context to his start in this first look. Ace has continued to be a pretty ridiculous shot maker, and he does some unique and special things in most games. He's been efficient off the dribble, shooting over 40% on a tough diet of looks, mostly in the mid-range and a few sprinkled in from 3. And at his size, he has the ability to raise up over defenders to the point that contests don't really bother him, especially against mismatches. He's attacked from the perimeter and gotten to 1 or 2 dribble looks, whether it's off a closeout or more of an isolation or the occasional pick and roll, and he's gotten to bump fades and turnarounds with a lot of success. And these are the type of shots that always stand out, from the confidence to the footwork and shooting touch on the move. Now, obviously there's more to being a great scorer than just this, but you also won't find a ton of 6'9", 18-year-olds that can do this. He's also been good operating in the mid-post and shooting right over the top of his defender, or also getting turnarounds or fades there too. And he was absolutely killing Columbia's matchup zone on those 15-footers, just rising right into them. Even though he can get a bit out of control at times, this is hard to come by and there's a lot to work with on the base level, especially given how efficient he's been at it and how consistent he's been in producing game to game.
That's where you got to get Bailey on the turnaround. Getting a little bit of help with doubles after he puts it on the deck. How about that?
And he says now Dad probably doesn't want to play anymore.
It's always got to be the best feeling the first time you beat Pops.
Harper has been a showstopper. Bailey's got just 5. He fires a 3.
Bailey, first of his college career. Step back.
Rebound pulled down for Bailey, who's coming off his first Rutgers double-double. And the mid-range.
Saturday night.
Dylan Harper's been quiet the last 4 or 5 minutes, BA.
Bailey going to work here. Bailey.
Now I want to cover all parts of his offense at once because I think it'll give a better picture of who he's been. So as impressive as some of the shot making is, he is pretty reliant on it to produce, and his overall decision making and ability to create easy looks is questionable at best. He struggled to create advantages, he doesn't get to the rim or paint that often by himself, his handle is fairly upright, and he isn't quite the type of mover that suggests he's going to be drastically different in a short time period. Now he is way more limber than say a Jabari Smith Jr. for example, but it's not quite effective yet. And honestly, those things are actually workable in the right situation, especially because of his age. It's more the decision making that's concerning. There's been a lot of heavily contested looks with open teammates. He's taken random early clock pull-ups, he's driven into traffic and had some issues. So far he has just 8 assists and 27 turnovers through the first 11 games, and the moments he draws a second defender and makes a play are few and far between. Now some of it has to do with him not having the most talented group here around him and Harper and the type of attention they get, but he's also had a lot of head scratching plays and ensuing questions about how much you're putting the ball in his hands at the next level.
Oh, great matchup here. Nick Kern and Ace Bailey.
Boy, that's a tough shot. Oh, and
Good hands, and it's back.
When you have an overtime loss like Ohio State suffered at home against Pittsburgh, sometimes that bleeds over to the next game. I think that's...
Now against Texas A&M and Seton Hall and even that Princeton game, we saw a lot of positives in his approach. One in attacking and making decisions quickly, but also in actually looking to drive to the rim and create a high percentage look instead of settling for a shot that he can get at any time. This is what you want to see more from him because it just makes him a much tougher player to stop. He'll need to work on using his body and probably his core strength to find better finishing angles because the numbers in traffic haven't been the best, and he has a tendency to go floater, which is nice to see the touch at his size, but it's also hard to survive on and furthermore ever get to the free throw line regularly doing that. But if we can see this more consistently, I'm positive he'll be harder to guard for teams in the Big Ten and help himself quite a bit just as a player and of course in his draft stock.
Bailey, look at another Euro and finish. A mismatch inside Somerville.
Bailey pulls up and hits. Turned it over. Rucker got a chance to tie it up here. Bailey from the mid-range, and this is where...
Shout out to all the women out there that are really showing out on that side.
Now, a lot of what we talked about already is why I think he's ideally more of a play finisher or off-ball threat, and that has been there, so it's not asking him to be wildly different than his skill set, but it would probably be a mentality shift. He's been capable off the catch from 3 and has some absolutely special footwork on movement looks. He's comfortable on pin downs and limited reps he's had on pick and pops, and as we've shown already, the 1 and 2 dribble pull-ups within flow and closeout attacks, that's the type of stuff that works any and everywhere in the league. I think there will be an emphasis on him being a good to great shooter to fully maximize as an offensive player, and that is still somewhat to be determined, even though I think that he can at least get close. But I think this is a much easier path to him having high level offensive player impact rather than putting the ball in his hands and asking him to recreate 03 T-Mac or PG or KD highlights. Now, I don't want to limit or box him in completely because he is so young, and I think if you're picking him, you allow him the freedom to go figure things out and try things. But with Ace, I'm thinking more Michael Porter Jr., Rashard Lewis, maybe pieces of Brandon Ingram. Lauri Markkanen is a name others have said I think is interesting playstyle wise. I just think that makes more sense for his skill set in a similar way we saw GG Jackson immediately step into an off-ball role in the league and kind of build out from there. But we'll see how Ace grows and evolves over the rest of the season, because he very well could reshape my thinking here. But for now, this is closer to the pitch for him than anything else, and that could still be a highly valuable player.
To the free throw line. They still can't find a 3 though. They're 0 for 9, and here comes.
Score remains 37-28. Harper inside to Bailey. That's pretty.
That rock.
Here's Harper. Back for Bailey. Swoops through it.
On the defensive end, I've actually been quite impressed by Ace. He's not perfect, but the pieces are there for him to be an impact guy. He's been good moving in space and using his length to contest. The closeouts have been mostly in control, and I think he's done a good job navigating and fighting through screens at his size, which I didn't expect to see the highs from this early. And believe it or not, there's actually a handful of moments he picked up in the full court against Princeton that caught my eye, as he at least made guys work and turn, and you just don't see that too often from others his size.
Nice smooth turnaround jump shot. Let's see if he can get it done over 6'10".
They're looking for those backdoor cuts from the wings now. Kicks it. Rutgers playing good defense here, moving their feet. Stevenson drives it, nowhere to go.
Now, he's still got a lot of growing to do. He's had too many bad fouls on jumpers that you want back. He can be a bit handsy, but the good has outweighed the bad, and in a situation like this, that's not always the case for a guy as highly regarded as him. Off the ball, he's at least giving you something in passing lanes and a little weak side. He's had a couple run-through chase downs and came up with a few highlights there. I'd like to see a little more from him just because I think he's physically capable of being a presence, but he's shown a lot of flashes, and with reps and more of an emphasis put on this end, I think he can get there in time. So out of everything, I've been most pleasantly surprised by his defense. If he can lean into a more ideal role offensively and then also brings it on the defensive end as a 6'9" wing, that's a player that's basically a lock to go in the top 10 of every draft class, even with some of his issues as a decision maker. So there's a very good case to be made for him. It just looks different than he's often been described, which has more to do with everyone else than it does him. And finishing things off here, at the moment there's a substantial case against Ace in some advanced numbers and statistical indicators, so I think they're worth considering and talking about. I feel like I had to say this every time, but they're never the end all be all. But the longer I've done this, I've gained a greater understanding of how the numbers correlate to projection, and especially those that are far in either the good direction or the bad. And for Ace, if he remains on the track that he's on, he's going to be in a group of players that you just have to be almost certain have elite traits, were overextended in their role, or are just super young. He currently has a BPM of 0.7, which is a pretty big red flag, and of the players who've been drafted with a BPM below 2, only 2 of them went in the lottery, Zach LaVine and Zaire Williams, and only a few of them became lasting rotation pieces, let alone players of the caliber of where Ace would like to be if he's taken high. You've got LaVine, you've got Jaden McDaniels, and then we take a big step back for Max Christie, GG Jackson, and Moussa Diabate, with those last 2 showing promise in the last year on bad teams. But that's really it. The assist numbers and assist to turnover rate is just as alarming historically, and speaks to all the decision making stuff we talked about already. So there's a ton of season left, and I'll be honest, I'd be somewhat surprised if he finishes this low, because my eyes in opposing teams' game plans tell me he's just a more impactful college player than basically everyone on this list, aside from maybe the peaks from freshman GG, but it's definitely worth considering going forward. Now for Ace, as much as anyone, I'm not sure the matchup really matters the rest of the way because it'll all be competitive teams. UCLA will be at the top of my list for him too, just because I really like their defensive personnel. But of course, Illinois, Maryland, Oregon, and Purdue will present challenges. The Michigan teams too. It's really just about his own approach rather than anything specific I think those teams can or will do. I'm not 100% sure where Ace is going to end up within this class. I think the group beyond Flag and Harper is really up for grabs in a lot of ways, as there's some intriguing talents, but also some flaws that make several of them less enticing as like blue chippers or guys you're super confident in taking that high. But there'll also be a point where Ace's game is too intriguing in comparison to those other options. So I'd imagine Ace will be in the mix anywhere from 3 to the late lottery. I'm currently undecided on where I'll end up, but there's a lot to like talent-wise as a big wing shot maker who has defensive upside but could use a bit of seasoning. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and let me know what you think of Ace's game and where you think he ends up in this class. As always, I'm Keandre, this is HoopIntellect. Until next time, I'm out.